to understand this definition, but I can tell you that after the adoption implementation of the MiFID regulation, we receive a lot of questions about the different aspects of this definition. That's maybe the advantage of discussing at open level and to be able to discuss that at a level of a network of European regulator. You are able to gather all information, all questions for the practice. And that's the reason why we were, I would say, forced to publish last year a consultation paper in order to give a lot of explanation about the real scope of this agreement. And I can tell you it's quite interesting for you maybe to discuss, to have seminars at the level of your respective national association in order to discuss some specific issue of this paper, because I would say the source of all the questions we receive come from you, from the practice, from professionals on the fields. And even more than that, we also took the initiative to publish a Q&A, a question and answer database, in order to understand the real scope of the definition of the advice under MiFID. And for instance, if I can try to quote a different example, what does it mean a personal recommendation? Which is, I think, quite important in order to check if you fall in the scope of the MiFID regulation. That's, of course, the distinction to be made between advice and information. Advice, you know that more than I, it means personalized comments, value judgment, versus pure information, only matter of fact, statement of facts and figures. Example of information: publicity, communication of prospectus, information on the composition of the asset of a fund. And I can tell you, it's maybe also important to know that you can have a dialogue with a supervisor. You can send questions. If you think that there is a risk of falling in the scope of MiFID, and it's not the objective to give an advice, but only for information, you can check that, you can send material, you can ask questions. We, as a European regulator, have a system of permanent dialogue with your national association, but also directly if you want to send a question in order to receive an answer via our Q&A. Other aspect to understand about the scope of the investment advice in the practice: what about transaction in financial instrument? Of course, it has to be, I would say, linked with a personal and a specific transaction about particular financial instrument, and not about a generic advice about asset classes and sectors. Example of general advice: it's a classical advice that you can give to your clients in order to invest on the basis of the current situation on the market, to invest 40% of assets in shares or bonds, 40% in real estate, and 20% in insurance. In this case, you are not falling in the scope of the definition relating to investment advice. Other kind of aspect to understand about the real scope of investment advice, that's about the difference between advice versus non-advice state. Advice is, of course, presented to be in the interest of a particular client, versus a non-advice sales, which are presented to an undefined class of clients. And of course, last but not least, very different role when you are giving an advice for pure financial returns for a specific client, and when you are working on corporate finance advice in order to give advice for professional purpose, for corporate finance, a client which intend to go on the stock exchange via IPO. Of course, in this case, you are not submitted to the MiFID regulation. That's for the, I would say, the current system about the qualification. What does it mean, an investment advice? If you are performing an investment, broadly speaking, at European level, you fall in the scope of MiFID regulation. What does it mean? MiFID, as you know, a lot of different rules relating to the so-called know your customer principle to be implemented in order to perform appropriate suitability tests about knowledge, experience, financial situation, objective, but also to be able to manage conflict of interest, especially when you are a tied agent, inducement, and last but not least, information to a client. And in order to help the practice, we have published several papers, assessment, questionnaire fulfilled by the practice in order to give some explanation about the scope of the different aspects of the suitability test. That's for the current state of the art. What are we doing at the present time? 3 years after the adoption of MiFID and the very fast implementation at national level by 27th May, it was not expected at this time that we would be able to implement all this new regulation, the first time that we could speak about rule of conduct, investor protection at European level. It was a success because everything was adopted just in time by 27 member states. Of course, 28 and 29 will be very special years, but after that, and especially in the framework of a so-called post-crisis agenda, it was time to review MiFID. And that's what we are doing for at the present time in order to provide for advice to the European Commission and also to see if still some provisions are still justified. For instance, and I know that's very important for you when we are discussing about level playing field between different financial planners. And I would like to thank you and to congratulate you for all the initiatives you are taking, I would say, at the present time, not only at European level, but in the framework of different national associations, because I know it's not easy, because what does it mean, a financial planner in the different member states? Not necessarily the same business. I can tell you, I think that there are some differences between Belgium, my home country, and Italy. And I think also that your profession is demanding for more quality in order to be able to have the same kind of level playing field in different member states. It's a good thing that the profession takes the initiative. And I think that we are fully aware that, and if we have the possibility to discuss this issue with your association, it will be excellent, because of course there are some question marks. For instance, the so-called Article 3 of the European regulation provides that member states may choose not to apply the directive to any person whose activities are limited to investment advice in transferable securities and UCITS. What does it mean? And I think that you regret it a little bit. It means that some member states are free to regulate investment advisor, and it means that in some member states, the level playing field, the quality of the standards of the profession are not the same. And I think that as European Association, you have tackled the issue, and CSER is aware of that, but also the European Commission, because I think that I may say that the European Commission intends to review this Article 3 in order to submit all investment advisors to the MiFID conduct of business rule. And I think we are going forward in order to obtain, with your support, a better level playing field at the level of the 27 member states of the European Union. Maybe one word of explanation about the PRIPS. I presume that you know what does it mean, the PRIPS. It means the package proposed at European level in order to propose a so-called horizontal approach regarding disclosure and selling practice for main retail investment products. Not an easy task for everybody, because it means that the regulators in charge for the control of the markets of financial information or fraudulent conduct have to discuss with the banking supervisor, the insurance supervisor, in order to find the same approach about the disclosure, about the same kind of financial instrument which are presented, sold, channeled through the same distribution channels. We are discussing about life insurance products versus UCITS and other, I would say, investment products. It was not an easy discussion, I can tell you, I can confess you, but we are, I think, going in the right direction in order to try to propose to the European Commission, and the European Commission will of course develop this approach via new regulation in order to propose the same approach about disclosure and financial information to be disclosed for investment funds, UCITS, retail structured securities, investment-based insurance and product structured terms deposit. Of course, the objective is not to cover all kinds of products, but the products which are the same basis, the same kind of philosophy about financing, but also the same kind of product which are presented to the retail client via the same channels. And that's the reason why we have created at the level of the three networks, CEPS, CSER, CEOPS, a so-called joint 3L3 task force. So you can imagine that we need such a room in order to be able to have a meeting of such 3L3 task force. But we succeeded, and we published in October 2010 2010 a first report of the 3L3 task force in order to propose some new steps about the same kind of level playing field relating to the PRIPS, the package retail investment products. What does it mean? In order to go straight to the point, sorry. What does this mean? It means that we decide, security supervisor, banking supervisor, but also insurance supervisor, to propose as benchmark, as far as the disclosure are concerned relating to all these kind of different families of companies, the same approach, and the starting point for the disclosure will be the so-called kit, and I presume that you know what it means. It means the kit that we are using for UCITS. So it means same kind of templates, same kind of approach for all kind of financial products. I can tell you a new world when you try to speak about level playing field between the different families of products. Selling practice, the objective is to extend mutatis mutandis, when you used to say 2,000 years ago in this area, to extend mutatis mutandis, the MiFID approach also to insurance products, to pension products, and to banking products. Not easy, even to convince other supervisors to do that, but it succeeded. The objective is to go through via different national tools to extend the philosophy of MiFID to new kind of insurance product. And last but not least, because I see that I'm over time, maybe some aspects which are very well known by you, by your profession. I would like again to thank you for the quality of your proposal. Of course, qualification and training is, I would say, the key aspect of a sound evolution of profession. I think that you have tackled this issue when taking a lot of initiative with a kind of system of permanent education via the Leonardo da Vinci program, which is a good thing that the profession takes the initiative itself. And I would like also to congratulate you for all the efforts you are doing at the present time. Need for European harmonized professional standards, not only via MiFID and extension of MiFID to new kind of tools, but also via the organization of the different national associations. Scope of European regulation, that will be, I would say, the touchy issue in the coming months and coming years, because I think that we have to avoid to come back to the business as usual, and the extension of the European regulation like PRIPS, the MiFID review, has to be extended at international level and at national level in order to have the same kind of level playing field approach about rule of conduct, and that's we are supporting at the level of the supervisor member overseas. And last but not least, of course, independence is a key issue for financial advisor and planner. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, as you can see, when at the start of my speech I tried to explain you that we are more and more involved in the discussion and topics related to profession, you can see that our agenda is matched with your realities and your professional expectation, and feel free to ask questions on to take contact with the European Supervisor. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Grazie, Presidente Servet. Presidente Boido,
questa partecipazione alla nostra convention. Le offriamo questa targa che ricorderà a lei, ma tutto sommato anche a noi, l'importanza di essere sempre secondo le indicazioni europee, una nazione, l'Italia, che però ragiona con una mentalità europea. E quindi grazie del suo intervento, grazie delle anticipazioni e
It's a sign from Efpa Italy for your presence here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman Servet.